Hello, my name is Christopher Kinman, and I am talking to you right now as about the topic of clinical supervision. For those of you who are counselors or therapists or something like that, um, I love running clinical supervision groups, and I run them with Kathy Richardson, and we've got one coming up in September. But before I talk to you a little bit about that, I want to talk to you about kind of setting the context for why I'm not satisfied with the language of clinical supervision. So, if you take the word supervision, it's got Latin roots with the word super, which means above, it means better than, uh, um, superior, that kind of language. And then vision is how we see. So, the idea of supervision is that there are people that see in a superior way and they see better than the rest of us do. And so we go receive supervision for them. And then the term clinical is reflective of the envy, I believe, that so many counselors have of the medical profession. We want to be like them. And we want to see the world and operate like them. I also don't particularly want to do that either. So, Kathy Richardson and I are doing this workshop coming up, and we are talking and dealing with supervision from the perspective of a term that we got from Lynn Hoffman. And the term is kitchen table talk. And Lynn's story is that she and also Tom Anderson in Norway started to talk about sitting around a kitchen table and having conversations, the kind of conversations that you would have around a kitchen table. That's not the same kind of conversation you would have with someone behind a clinician's desk. That's not the kind of conversation you would have with someone behind a teacher's podium. But rather, it is a more democratic kind of conversation that happens around the kitchen table. Since we've kind of decided to do this language, we've heard from others that this idea of kitchen table talk is important to them as well, quite separate from Lynn and Tom Anderson. One of the ways we have found, for instance, that Indigenous people have used the idea of kitchen table talk as a basis for doing research. So the research is in that more democratic sitting around the kitchen table. The concept of roundness is very important to Indigenous people. I would like to share with you a quote, a wonderful quote. Now, Thompson Highway is an Indigenous writer, and he was raised on the trap line in northern Canada, and he has become a major playwright. He's also a classical pianist, and he and his gay partner live in France now. But let me read to you what he wrote. He's dealing with the concept of roundness. So think of it as think of the kitchen table as a round place. It's not a place that you're behind in a linear way. It's a place that you were around. So there's a roundness to it. So think of this as I read to you this piece from Thompson Highway. Indigenous people still functioned at a fundamental level of their inner consciousness in circles. The drum, the round dance, the sun dance, the four directions, the four seasons, the teepee, the sweat lodge, the circle of elders and counselors that governed a village, the roundness of earth as mother goddess, the endless cycle of life and death, consensus as opposed to choice by election as circle, time as circle, even the languages, Cree, Blackfoot, Dene, which define life in and as a circle. Outwardly, indigenous people may have semi-functioned in those straight lines, marched to the beat of the drummer, so to speak, but inwardly they still functioned in curves. Now, for the first time, they have to walk through the streets of cities whose blocks were square, whose buildings were square and rectangular. The blocks of desks in a classroom, the rows of pews in a church, the vertical straight line of male, female, and neuter as social hierarchy, the straight line of life and death. That is to say, the vertical lines from heaven, from earth to hell, the board of directors that govern communities and organizations, which in itself is one of those straight lines. That is the straight line of the electoral system, the straight line of budgets, the straight line of a Western economy. Time is a straight line, even the language, French and or English, as tongues that defined life in and as straight line. All these changes were too much for us. Life in and as straight lines. All these changes were too much for us. Connection with the roundness of nature was severed. This was our eviction from the garden. These are the words from the brilliant Thompson Highway, inviting us to see life in circles and to challenge the straight lines that dominate in our Western world. But we want to experiment with this. We want to experiment with the idea of kitchen table talk, of circles rather than lines, in the context of assisting and supporting other people who are working with people, what is commonly known as clinical supervision. If you'd like to join us, feel free to contact me or contact Kathy, and we'd be happy to have you join us. Have a great day. Bye.